What is going on, guys? It is Drone, and welcome back to the Minecraft How to Build series. In today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be giving you my top 5 building tips for new beginning builders. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get right into it. So my very first tip that I have for you guys is plan out your builds in creative before you try to do it in survival mode. In survival, it takes so much time in order to plan things out, so if you have a creative backup in your world, that is great, or alternatively, if you just have a creative world like I have here, then that is great as well. Just plan things out here in creative, where things are a bit easier in order to play around with the different block variation that you want to use in your builds. This world that I'm in right now is my creative test world that I've been using for about a year now, and it has a ton of different variations of builds that I've tried and improved over the course of me using this world. Such as my cat building. This is about the 4th or 5th cat building that I made. Same with this building, that building, this weird looking demon shaped building, our evil Pac-Man building, and so on and so forth. Planning all of these things out in survival mode would have taken much longer than how I did it here in just creative mode. So the next big tip is use a build palette. A build palette is basically a collection of blocks that all look good together in a build. Things that have complementary colors that you're going to use to construct your entire build. Basically, this stops you from going and grabbing random blocks that you have and just kind of throwing them into your build, and they don't really match the rest of the build. If you go ahead and lay out a build palette and say, all of these blocks in my texture pack look good together, then you can just go and grab those blocks that you need in order to construct your build. So this is my build palette that I have been using here in this creative test world. And this is a build that I have made. It's not complete, but as you can see, it's pretty appealing to the eye because all of those textures go together really well, and I decided that those are the only blocks that I'm going to use. So I have things like stone brick, the polished andesite, the cobblestone, the cracked stone, some wood, some slabs, some stripped oak logs. Pretty much everything that I'm using in this build has already been decided in my build palette over here. And that is exactly what you want to do. Lay out a palette, that way you know what blocks look good together, and then use those blocks in your build. So the first 2 tips are things that all builders do. All builders plan things out in creative first for the most part, and all builders work with a build palette for the most part. The next 3 tips are going to be things that are really heavily focused on beginning builders, showing beginners some little tricks that you can use in order to make better looking builds until you improve your build style. The first one that we're going to cover here is what is known as the 5x5 build layout. Now, this building layout has been kind of coined here on YouTube by Andy is Yoda, but it's a very popular method, as well as the 7x7 layout. But basically what this layout is you lay out on the floor some 5x5 areas. So you have a block with 3 blocks gap, and then another block, and that makes a 5x5 cube. And you can just lay these out all over the place for however you want your build to be. So if we do 1, 2, 3, like this, like this, like this, and you can just make your grid however you want, and this can all be your building. And now you're going to have some type of big hall, maybe like a church, with a little outlet out to the side. This is how you would design your build. Now, in designing your build for 5x5, what you would do is take this section, and this is going to be a section of your building. So let's say, I don't know, we want to do this as a tower. So what we would do is we would build up this as a tower and go way into the sky with it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. So as you can see, we now have a fairly basic looking tower here, but we can actually improve the look of this tower by adding some other aspects to this area. But first, I want to continue covering the 5x5 build palette because while yes, this area fits in a 5x5 build palette, it's relatively plain. So how do we add additional structures to this in order to make a bigger building? Well, basically what you would do is come to something like one of your edges, bring up a few blocks, knock out a few blocks here, and now what you can do is just extend out some blocks like so with your oak half slabs from your build palette. And there you go. Now you have yourself a nice little dock extension. You can even put your stone bricks back, maybe put a door right there. You can do a lot of things with this 5x5 build palette. You can even add additional buildings. So this is something that I did with my 5x5, and if you actually look at it, this is the tower. And then going further, you can see we have another 5x5 area here that is part of the bridge. Then we have another 5x5 area here that I'm planning on going into kind of a house structure in this area. All of this fits into a 5x5 area though. It's just 5x5 sections that make up everything in this build. I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and finish up this house so you can get a little bit better feel for how this 5x5 can actually look. So here we are back, and I have now finished out this section of this building, and I have to say that I think it came out looking pretty good, and it still fits within all of the 5x5 parameters that I told you guys about. So let's go ahead and check in here. As you can see, we have a nice little awning over here. On the inside, I don't have a floor in because I wanted to show you that this is still abiding by the 5x5 rule. I've brought in some pillars before I made this tower, and all of this fits in a 5x5. So you can see 3 blocks, 3 blocks, 3 blocks, and then 1 block here where our posts come up. We have ourselves a 5x5, as well as this little area here that is our little small connection piece that adds to our entranceway down here is also a 5x5. The 5x5 or the 7x7 build layout is extremely useful for new builders that don't really know how to lay out a build or how to build organically. If you want to build a structure that looks very Minecrafty, like this looks like something that could potentially spawn in Minecraft as a generated structure, this is how you do it. This is how you do it. Use a 5x5, use a grid layout, because that's how the game goes about spawning things, is in grids. So if you're building in grids, it actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't detail out the back portion of this build that much, but we'll go to a detailing section and depth section later on in the video. Let's move on to the fourth tip of this video though, and that is working with a gradient. And this is going to tie back into this build as well, but this is a more clear example over here on this tower. As you can see, the tower is not just stone bricks all the way down like we have with this build over here. This build is completely stone bricks, and it looks kind of plain and kind of boring and not something that you really want to live in. Whereas if we come over to this area, you have a nice looking gradient going from the bottom to the top to add a little bit of depth. So if you want to think of this as adding detail, then basically the detail in your build is the bottom stone bricks have kind of cracked over time from the weight of holding up the rest of the tower. As you go up higher, this is maybe some weathering from rain and stuff like that, wind beating up the stone bricks and changing the texture into polished andesite. And as you get up to the top where everything should be fairly well protected from the roof, you have the brand new stone bricks that looks like it hasn't been weathered, hasn't had a lot of pressure on it. And there you go. You just work with a gradient from top to bottom, and it adds another level of detail to your builds. In fact, I even did it kind of subtly with this building, if you've noticed. At the bottom down here, we have cobblestone as kind of the foundation for our build that everything is sitting on top of. And I kind of worked in a gradient this way. So I started with cobblestone, then I went into some stripped logs, and then I went really heavy onto the planks, where theoretically that would be a much lighter not as heavy of a material as the logs or the cobblestone would be. So I kind of worked with a gradient here, not so much. I mostly went for detail and design, but it does, if you're working with a gradient, working with different colors in different places, then things turn out looking really nice. Now, the fifth and final tip is adding depth. You do not want to have anything that is like this. You don't want flat walls, things that are boring. And this is where the 5x5 building method really comes into play as well, because a great way to break up something like this wall would be, let's just extend our building out to here and add like a little small entranceway and an awning. You could even add like a small window or something like that here. Let's actually get out some materials and we'll do a bit of building on camera. So let's say that this is going to be our door. So I'll maybe cap this off with a stair, add in little bits of detail here. So we have kind of a weirdly shaped entrance window here. We could put some glass or something like that, but that's not particularly important. Let's go ahead and get an awning in. So let's get us some fences. I'm just going to use oak in this case, and we're just going to build up by 2 for our player to fit under. And then I think I'll come with some campfires right across the build like this. And we'll just bring this out all the way to our fence posts. And then you just turn off your campfires by using some splash potions of water or by shovels if you're in survival mode. And then you have yourself a nice little added bit of detail to this side with an awning. Another thing up here where it's kind of flat, you may want to break something else out, maybe take something and do another window like that. Just adding any type of depth or variation to your build makes it look a lot better. You don't want flat walls like this. This just doesn't look good, and adding any type of detail is better than adding no detail. Let me grab planks and fix this. Yeah, so this is kind of boring. Adding anything to the bottom down here would make it look very, very much better. In fact, even something that you don't necessarily have to change your building if you have a flat wall, but just change the flatness here. Something that I like to do if I have a extremely flat wall in a building is add like some hay bales to the bottom down here and make a big pile of hay. Just something like this, maybe bring it down here, and it just breaks up the bottom. And then I'll maybe come out with some fences just kind of randomly around, and now I have myself a nice little pasture area off the back of my building. And I also have broken up this area visually to where it looks a little bit better. So now let's go into the bonus tip of the day. This is going to encompass quite a lot, but first and foremost, practice. In order to get better at building, you have to practice building. Practice makes perfect whenever it comes to building. You're not going to make nice things unless you practice making nice things. So having a creative world, like I said in my top 5 tips, is super important so you can just practice getting in the flow of building. It's really something that you're going to have to play around with, find your own style as well before you can really get good at it. Next, one of the big things I would say is get inspiration from other builders, especially whenever you're starting out building. Going on YouTube, going on Pinterest, anything like that, finding a good builder and just taking inspiration from them. What are they building? What looks good? And what appeals to you and what you're wanting to build? If you want to learn more about this 5x5 building method, probably the best YouTube channel out there would be Andy is Yoda. His entire YouTube channel is made off of this 5x5 building method for the most part. He has a ton of tutorials about it. He also does some 7x7 as well if you want to build things that are a little bit bigger and have a bit more space. He has some of those as well. If you want to build a bit more organically and not necessarily follow this 5x5, you can check out plenty of other builders. You can check out my channel. You can check out people like Fwhip, BOO, Mythical Sausage, Good Times with Scar. There's a lot of really, really good builders out on YouTube. You just got to go out and look for them. But for the 5x5 building method, I would really recommend Andy is Yoda. Pinterest is another great resource. Lots of 5x5s on Pinterest, as well as lots of other really good builds. Also, another thing that a lot of people don't use on Pinterest is concept art. Concept art for video games is a great source of inspiration for builds, especially if you're looking for fantasy or goblin or dwarf builds or elven builds, anything like that. Pinterest is a great way to get concept art. So it's not necessarily Minecraft, but it'll at least give you ideas. I hope this video helped you guys at least get into the door of building. This is top 5 building tips for beginners, but there's also some other things that I can cover with building. I can cover things like how to add more detail, how to add more depth to flat walls, different tricks that I do in order to add little small layers of detail into builds, such as this little accent point on the top of roofs. It's kind of a staple that a lot of YouTubers use now just to add a little bit of variation. Also, other little tricks that you can do would be vary up your roof a bit by adding things like that. Lots of really cool tips and tricks that I can give you guys if you guys would like a video on that. But anyway, guys, I think that's going to be where I wrap up today's video. I do hope that you enjoy. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video, as well as if you're new around here, be sure to subscribe. But anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me today. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Man, that was a really rushed outro. You guys have a great day.